All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Matt's Mindset Monday. And I have a really amazing guest that we're going to meet here in a little bit. And this episode is something that is dear to my heart and something that I truly believe in. That the title of the episode is Fear or Faith, you choose, or faith or fear, you choose, actually. But those two words are super impactful to me because I didn't always have faith, to be completely honest. I lived a life of, I would say, fear. And as I started, I talked to Nick, who you guys will meet here in a second. And, I brought up, I was like, I would really love to do this topic, especially with his background and what he does now. I just thought it was like the perfect thing to discuss. And what it really is faith and fear are can just be seen as kind of just harmless words, but they're so much stronger than that. Even though these two words kind of are both powerful in life, they're actually polar opposites of each other. And faith is the trust and belief that God's going to get you where you need to go. Fear is uncertainty. And sometimes fear can be paralyzing in that if you're afraid to do something, you might not ever take that first step in order to be able to get somewhere. So I simply look at fear as that it makes you think irrationally and makes, your actions harmful. And I don't mean harmful like you're doing harm, but they could be harmful towards where you want to go in life. Whereas faith makes you brave, courageous, wise even. And it's kind of interesting that these two words are such polar opposite. If you think about them, I would almost argue that they can coexist together, meaning that you either have fear and it's going to limit what you're able to achieve, or you have faith that God's going to carry you where you need to go and everything's going to work out. So that's going to be our topic today, and we're going to jump straight in. So first, let me introduce my guest, Mr. Nick Martin, and let's kick this off by just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, maybe your family, things like that.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. My name is Nick Martin. My wife is Jonna Martin. We've been married for going on 10 years in May. We'll celebrate our 10-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
We have a 9-year-old daughter, and about a year ago, we took in our, he's now 2. He's my nephew, and he lives with us. So he's been with us for about a year. So we have a 2-kid home and a little dog named Minnie, and it's just a blessing to be able to, again, I'll be married 10 years in May, and that's just a blessing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
I was about to ask you what the plans were, but we can't spoil the surprise. So let's go past that.
Yeah.
And I think we first met kind of in passing, but it was at Friends of Sinners. And of course, I've had Joe Welsh on before, and I've been involved in Friends of Sinners before, and I know you've been there for a while now. So tell us a little bit about your kind of background, with them, and anything else, and then also what you do now.
Yeah, so Friends of Sinners is an amazing ministry that I worked at for 4 to 5 years. I'm now on the board at Friends of Sinners. I still support it. Joe Wells, he gave me my first opportunity there. I worked night shift and I went to day shift, and I just got to be a part of the program and see guys' lives change. Like, I got to see guys go from jail to getting their family backs to having careers I got to see that over and over and over again. And just people that the world would throw away, Friends of Sinners would invest in and pour into. And I just got to see, and I became family with so many men there in that ministry. So that's what I did for about 4 to 5 years. And then God had called us to start a church where I'm at now, which is Matthew's Table. In a few months, we'll celebrate our 5-year anniversary as a church. So we've been going for 5 years, and I do this full time now, a pastor at Matthew's Table.
Yeah. And I know, and I think we're going to get into this in a little bit, but I just think it's absolutely amazing. So we have to talk about, you guys received a really amazing blessing recently, right?
Oh yeah. So we was just gifted a building that has been here for 100 years. It was Buena Vista Baptist Church. Their church graciously said, hey, we want this to continue. And they seen that we didn't have a church home. We was meeting in the Elizabeth Monday Center, and they gave us their building.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing and evidence of God's hands right there.
Oh
So
yeah.
let's jump in, and I always like to kind of kick these off with something mindset related, and then we're going to really dive into the topic. And the mindset is in relation to our topic is, what does faith mean to you?
Yeah. So faith means to me is you may not know or be able to see the whole picture, but the faith that God will carry you through, the faith that you will be okay. So you don't have to have the whole puzzle put together. You don't have to see every step of the way, but the faith that, hey, God's got me no matter what.
Yeah, I love that, and it is something that I think is really important, is that we have that ultimate trust that there is some sort of higher being, like the power. I said this the other day to somebody, the power of belief is the strongest power there
Oh
is.
yeah.
It can carry you through the highest highs, the lowest lows, and everywhere in between. Is just believing that there's something greater out there. And there was I was watching, who was Tom Hanks on TikTok of all things. So I've gotten into TikTok over the last few months, which is a whole different story for a different day. But I was listening to Tom Hanks, and his whole thing was, "This too shall pass." And
Yeah.
he said, "Hey, if you're down in a rut and people don't understand you and life's hard, this too shall pass.
That's
And
it.
if you're on the highest of highs and everything's going great and life couldn't be any better, well, this too shall pass also."
That's it.
So there's always that roller coaster, if you will, of where you're at and how things are going. And it's the power of belief and faith is what, in my opinion, at least, that will carry you through, because there's nothing like when everything's going great and all of a sudden stuff, maybe
Oh,
isn't going your way, like the bounce back factor, right? I
yeah.
100% contribute that to faith.
Yeah, because whether life's going good or bad, it's that roller coaster, like you said, and just knowing this too shall pass has gotten me so through so many storms in my life. Like just knowing, hey, you will get through this. Like you will be okay. Like God does have you.
I love that. So what role would you say faith has played in your life, past versus current?
Yeah. So what faith has done to me now is again knowing that God has me. But before, and my wife was a big proponent in this, is I just operated off of fear and a limited mindset. And I remember when my wife would say, like, Nick, why do you settle for certain things? Like, you're one of the smartest people I know. I had this limited worldview and limited mindset and I just operated off of fear. Well, that doesn't make sense. Or, that doesn't add up. Like, I wouldn't be able to do anything like that. Whereas faith, like even before I was a Christian, I remember starting my own detail shop and just thinking like, hey, I can do this. And then after that, I had my own consignment shop, and I didn't even have all the answers then, but my wife had instilled in me this belief of you can do it. Like if someone else can do it, Nick, you can do it. But that was faith in myself, and that was one thing. But now today I live with a faith with God that God gives me, knowing that He has me, even if I take a step, that God is faithful even when I am not. So that's the difference between now as a Christian in my life. Then I had a fear-based mentality and a limited faith in myself. I thrived off of other people maybe having faith in me, but the doubt would always creep in.
Yeah, and I think that's super powerful what you said there. And I wrote that down as, faith in yourself versus faith in God. And I think you just nailed it with that last little statement, is if your faith is in others and or yourself, it's breakable, like
Yeah,
100%. Because we are, like, our human emotions, the way our brains work, and I've studied a lot of the science of the way the brain works, is a negativity has a effect on our mindset and our brains that will create cracks in what
yeah,
is truly possible, versus having that faith in the higher power. And something that a lot of people may or may not know about me, but I grew up in a very religious family. I mean, when I was my mom used to make me go to church even when she didn't go to church. And when I was with my grandparents, we were in church, every week, and, baptized, communion. We were Catholic, or Catholic. And, but there was a period in my life where I really studied sciences at a really high
mhm,
level. And I remember when I was 13, I read the whole Bible. I got into, from 13 to about 17, I got into a lot of religious studies, like probably
yeah,
too young of an age to be studying it, because
yeah,
probably did some things to me that I wasn't capable of understanding yet. But, read the Bible from front to back, read the book of Quran. I mean, I studied like multiple different books, just trying to understand what is this. And then when I got into college, I got on a really scientific kick. And to be completely transparent, I lost my faith at some point. Almost when I was late 20s, like almost, I'm not going to say I was atheist because I never didn't fully believe, but I also was like, if I can't see it, it's not true. Like I just had that mindset. And then it wasn't until, maybe, I don't know how long ago, 8-10 years ago, something like that, that I rediscovered faith. And it was and what's funny about that, when I did that is when my whole life started to change. Like the things that I never thought were possible, like even just sitting on here, like with you right now, like I would have never in my wildest dreams thought I'd be doing something like this, but not only that, but what I've been able to do, accomplish personally, it wasn't until I started to believe in faith that, a few years down the road that I met my wife. It wasn't until I started to believe in faith that, my business really started to take off and we were able to achieve some pretty amazing things. So, but before I thought I could just trust myself, and I didn't need somebody to help carry me alongside through those difficult times. And I probably stayed in difficulty longer than I needed to due to a lack of faith. So.
Oh yeah, I've been right where you're at, and I just trusted myself, and I wanted to have this faith in myself, and I didn't necessarily doubt God, but if I didn't see it, again, it didn't make sense to me. It didn't add up to me, and everything had to make sense in my mind. And a lot of times with faith, it always doesn't make perfect sense, but you do it anyway.
I loved what you said when we were preparing this: 2 + 2 = 4. And if 2 + 1 doesn't equal 4, then it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I was in that same boat, and now it's like, forget that. Like there's a reason we're here. There's a reason we're sitting here, and all glory to him, because without him, it wouldn't be possible, for sure.
That's right.
Yeah. So what do you recommend for people who are, or excuse me, let me back up. Actually, I always hear this, and we talked about it a little bit, but God only gives you as much as you can handle. And you have a really interesting take on this, because I've never heard this before. Do you care to expand on what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I always hear people say God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And I probably wouldn't necessarily believe in that, because I think as faith means is like we live something for far greater than ourselves. So if you see each of Jesus's disciples, they all died for their faith. And could they handle that? Maybe, maybe not, but they had an eternal perspective. They had a bigger perspective of, if this cost us everything, then we're okay with that. So they had a faith in a bigger picture. So could they handle dying? I guess they could. But I think so many people use that in terms of like, oh, you'll be okay, you'll get through this. But I think faith would say, like, whether the worst happens, you'll be okay. So whether Nick Martin dies today, I need to have an eternal perspective on the bigger picture of like, look, I'm okay because I'm going to be with God. I'm going to be with Jesus. So that's what I believe on. God doesn't give you more than you can handle, because even as a Christian, like so many people think when you become a Christian, life just becomes easy. Like God won't put more on you than you can handle. Since I've been a Christian, actually life's been kind of hard. Like me and my wife lost a baby. My nephew died. My dad died. Like so many things. I got sick. My wife got really sick, and we didn't know why. And man, that was hard seasons of how are we going to get through this? But there was faith in always, hey, there's a better day. And many times I would ask God, like, God, why am I going through this right now? I can't handle this right now. My wife is asking me questions, and I don't know the answers to. But then I think that's where that faith from the outside comes in. And Nick, I got you. Nick, there's have an eternal perspective, have a bigger perspective than the right now. Because although I couldn't handle it in those seasons, I can now look back and see that me and my wife was able to share our testimony with other people who had been through similar things.
And I think there's something super powerful about your story and telling your story. And I mean, everybody has a story, right? And it used to be that when I was first in, whether it be personally or professionally or whatever, like I was afraid to tell my story. Like I didn't want to broadcast the way that I grew up, the experiences that I went through, because I felt like I had to be this certain type of person in order to achieve what I was trying to achieve at the time. And it wasn't until I actually, became 100% truthful and honest with myself, and knew that, hey, it's okay to have flaws, that really everything started to come together, because I actually ended up being more relatable to people. And I truly believe that people learn more from your mistakes and your past and your story than they can you just prescribing the answer to whatever their ailment is at that time.
Most of the people that we've been able to reach is because me and my wife have shared, look, our marriage hasn't always been the greatest, but this is how we got through. Our life hasn't always been the best. And I love when people share their story, because if someone can see you doing it, that gives them the hope and the faith. Hey, maybe I can do it. If he got through this, then maybe I can do it. Or, if he built this certain career, maybe I can too. So, man, I love hearing people's testimony stories. Like, I think we need more of it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And, and something that, we briefly touched on, I want to circle back around. It isn't necessarily a question that we prepped, but, we both talked about how when our faith got in alignment or a better place, or everything really started to take off for us. We had those difficult times, yes, but things started to take off. What is just your personal opinion on how faith can exponentially help you grow versus just, like you said earlier, that trusting yourself?
Yeah, so I think faith can help you grow by remembering what has already happened in the past. So when I look at even the building that we're in at Matthew's Table today, I have that faith of like, look, we wouldn't be in this building outside of God. So that faith helps carry me through and get me through. And whether you're at in life, like you can always look back and say, hey, I made it past that. This too shall pass. So I think that's how faith continues to help us grow. Like for me, as I get to look at a building on 23rd and Allen every Sunday, every Wednesday, every day of the week that I come here and say, look, God got me. God's got us. Like in any time that I doubt and that fear kind of creeps in, I have a reminder to come look at, hey, Nick, it's going to be okay. You can continue to step out on faith. And I think so many people's stories maybe even in there, like, okay, this happened for me and that's the end. And I don't think that's the end. I think it's just the beginning, and you can continue to build. You can continue to step out in faith and go from there.
Yeah, I love that. And, I know in the preparation for this, one of the questions was that we were talking through is, the faith or fear. And, when you first got that building, I think you'll admit a little bit of fear maybe crept in just for a second. Can you touch base on that? Because I think it's important for our listeners to understand that even if you're the most faithful person ever, fear will still try to creep into your mindset. So talk to me a little bit about the fears you had around that building and then how you pivoted.
Oh yeah. So if people don't know, like we was gifted a $3 million building, and it's a huge building. It's more than we thought we could even handle at one point. And I remember the first month or two, like we went from celebrating to what if we don't make budget? What if the air conditioning unit goes out? What if, there's problems with the roof or the heating? Or so that fear began to creep in, and I started to think like, oh, what do we need to do something different now? But then like there was that reminder of like, Nick, hold on. I just gave you a $3 million building. I just provided that for you, and we didn't have to spend $1. Like it was gifted to us by a faithful church that had been here for 100 years. But then I think that fear always has a way of trickling. And if you don't kill it at that moment, then it grows bigger and bigger and it starts to overtake. And then you'll start operating out of fear instead of faith. And you'll start doing things that you normally wouldn't do because that fear has started to trickle in.
Yeah, Amanda Long just posted on Facebook, and I thought this was spot on, is that the devil attacks every day. Daily prayer all day long is important, which leads us to the perfect segue. Thank you, Amanda, to my next question is, talk to me about the power of prayer.
Yeah, so the power of prayer, it always has me thinking, okay, God, I need to rely on him instead of Nick. So for at Matthew's Table, I know a lot of churches do it, but we've never passed the plate. We've always said we're just going to depend on prayer. We're going to depend on what God brings in. And we just always wanted to fully rely on him. So prayer always just has a way of reminding me of, Nick, you need God to do anything. And one of my favorite things before I preach is I always say, God, more of you, less of me. And that's my reminder to myself, like, Nick, you can get up here and give the best speech. You can get up here and give the best sermon. But without God doing something, it's just going to fall flat. So prayer is always the remembrance to me of, Nick, rely on God and not on yourself.
Yeah, I love that. And
Yeah.
do you feel like prayer is not only, what you said, but it also, so I'm trying to articulate how I want to say, when I was younger, it seemed, because I didn't know any better, I would say, at least I hope, I would only pray when I needed something.
That's it.
And that's 100% it. Like, I remember sitting by my bed, and life's troubles were coming at me, and at that point I would pray, but I wouldn't necessarily pray when everything was going good. And can you touch base on just your experience, like, why are we that way, and what can we do to create habits in order to change so that it's we're giving glory and not just asking for help all the time?
Yeah, so I think in prayer, one of the things that I always tell our church is we almost go to God like he's Santa Claus. Like, just give me, give me, give me. This is my request that I need you to fulfill. When prayer is communication with God, relationship with God. And if you only went to your wife when, hey, you need something, that wouldn't be a very good relationship. So things that I try to practice in prayer is meditation. And that's one of my worst habits, is just being still. Because when I get out of bed, I got a long list of things that I'm already thinking of. Nick, make your wife coffee, get the house clean, start getting your kids up. But for me, I have to actually slow down, breathe, sit down for 10 to 15 minutes, and not just give God my list, but sit there long enough to hear from God as well. To God, what do you want me to think about? What do you want me to read today? Who do you want me to reach out to today? And often, so many times, like, we just treat prayer as, okay, I'm eating, I need to pray. I'm going to bed, I need to pray. When prayer is actually just communication with God. Like, we don't, again, if you just communicated with your wife or your spouse at dinner time and at night, when you're going to bed, that wouldn't be a very good relationship. So prayer should be included in all things that we do.
That's an awesome way I've never heard anybody word it that way, but that totally, I love that. Like, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how your faith and praying has helped you with your personal struggles or adversity that you faced in your life. Tell us an example of that.
Yeah. So I remember, and I was thinking about this at one point in my life, faith. And my wife, again, she instilled it in me long before I believed in myself. But she would always say, even before I thought it was possible, Nick, one day we'll buy a house. And I would be like, no, we're not. And she would be like, yes, we can. And for me, no one in my family had ever bought a house. And I didn't think it was possible because no one had ever done it. So when my wife would tell me those things and we would work on our credit, I never could see the end. I would be like, hey, we've been paying off our credit for years and years and years. And I don't see any finish line in sight. But then I even remember the day where we signed on our house and got our keys. And I just remember thinking, like, wow, my wife had faith even when I didn't. And I think that's why it's so important to, when you lack faith, to have other people around you to pour faith into you, like, hey, to inspire you, like, hey, this is achievable. You can do this. You can change. Like, so many people, they get to a place in life where they just don't believe change is possible. They just get stuck in this mindset of like even for me, no one in my family had ever bought a house. So I didn't think it was possible for me to buy a house. And I think that's why it's so important to have those friends around you that say, hey, you can do this. I believe in you. I have faith in you. Like, and sometimes for me, like, that gave me hope. Like, okay, my wife said we could do this and we did it. So Nick, now you know that, hey, you can have faith in other things now.
So something just I wrote down as you were talking, instant gratification. And I think
That's
that
it.
it all, everybody, myself included, like we all want instant gratification. And as you were telling that story, it just made me think about one of the impacts that faith has had on me personally and others is it lets us play the long game. It lets us know
That's right.
that there's more out there than I don't have to achieve this, this day. So, you guys set out to buy the house and, you, for whatever reason, that moment wasn't the time, right? But
Yeah.
you were able to take steps towards progressing to be able to do it. And because of your faith and the faith of others around you, you were able to achieve that goal, which I think is an absolutely beautiful thing. And congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
But
So many people get stuck and it isn't happening right now. And I think that's why faith is so much bigger than right now. You always look at the bigger picture, the bigger goal, the bigger, what's out there. Like it's not about right now, but it's having faith in the future, having faith in God and where He's taking you.
yeah. So one thing I was having a conversation the other day is we were talking about, and somebody just point blank asked me about faith, and this person, he said, I just don't understand why God did this to me.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of times, especially if we're not super involved in our faith or have that true higher faith, then we feel like God did stuff to us specifically. So what do you have to say to that? And I'm kind of throwing you a curveball here, but I'm just interested in your take
No,
on
I
that.
hear that all the time. And I feel people's pain when they go through things like that, to where like God, and I've been there, like, God, why did I have to go through this? Why did, I have to experience this? And I always thought, even like, God, if I was born into a different family, maybe my life would be different. Like, why did this happen to me? Or, why did my family end up this way? But I would tell people like that, there's always a bigger story, right? God is working. And sometimes we go through things not for the right now, but for the later. So maybe one day that story will impact thousands of people. Maybe what you've been through will impact somebody at the perfect time. Because, like I said, when me and my wife had lost a baby, man, I cried out to God. I didn't know why that was happening. I went from complete excitement and joy and celebration to God. We had to get rushed to the hospital because they not only said we lost a baby, but if we didn't have emergency surgery, my wife could die. And in that moment, I'm like, God, why would you let this happen to me? I've been faithful. I served at Friends of Sinners. I started the church at Matthew's Table. Why is this happening to me right now? But what I didn't see is the people my wife would be able to talk to who had been through the same things or are going through the same things now. And she's been able to wrap her arm around them and say, look, I've been there. We can get through this together.
Wow. That just gave me chills. Listen, and you're spot
Mhm.
on, right? Like probably one of the hardest moments in your entire life turned out
Oh
to
yeah.
be an impact that was tenfold,
Oh
versus
yeah.
you could ever imagine. Wow.
So we
Wow.
don't always know right then, but God always has a bigger plan.
Yes, it does. So what is something that you want to be remembered for? Like just you personally?
And I thought about this the other day and I spoke with a friend about it. I'm 35 now. I said, look, I got probably 40, 50 good years left, maybe, hopefully. I said, I want to be remembered as someone who just kept stepping out in faith. I don't want to shrink back right now. Even though, like, hey, we just got a $3 million building and everyone would say the church is going great. I don't want to relax. I was like, man, if I got 40 years left, I want to go all in. I want to go all in for kids in the community. I want to go all in for people in jail. I want to go all in for people in addiction. So if I could be remembered for anything, it would be that, like, hey, God can restore your marriage. This change is possible. You can get out. So, like for me, I spent 4 years in jail, and one of my big goals in life is for other people that have been there to say, hey, if Nick can do it, you can do it. I just want to continue to go all in. I don't want to have a lazy faith. I don't want to shrink back. I want to just go all in. And when I die, I want to say I wrung it all out, that
Yeah.
I did everything I can do.
Something that I read in the prep for this that you wrote is I want to be remembered for things that will matter 10,000 years from now. And you
That's
want to talk
it.
about I mean, that's, you want to talk about higher power and a vision and a big vision. I mean, I think that's the definition of it. So I
Yeah,
love that.
one of my favorite things, and I preached on this yesterday, is when me and my wife go on vacation, she thinks I'm weird, but I like to go look at abandoned buildings. And I always tell her what that shows me is, look, the things that most people spend their life on now will be abandoned one day. In 10,000 years, it won't matter how much money is in my bank account, how much, how big my house was. In 10,000 years from now, you'll know who you impacted. And one of my favorite quotes is, we should live our lives to make heaven more full and hell more empty. And that will matter 10,000 years from now, when people will thank you 10,000 years from now for the impact that you have on their life.
Wow, that's some amazing perspective. I mean, you got me thinking over here now. Like, man,
Yeah.
I need to adjust my goals. I don't know how many people am I going to impact? So
Yeah, well, I learned about this town a week ago. In 1862, it was called Bannock, Montana, and there was gold there. And all these people had moved there, tens of thousands of people, and now it's a ghost town. And then I asked our church yesterday, how many of you spend your life building up your own Bannock, Montanas? And it's not about that. It's about the people you're going to reach, the people you're going to impact.
Wow. Yeah, that is, especially when you look at multi-generational impact, because it's not just the words and the actions that you're doing today. It's, that has a ripple effect, right? So that affects, some kid who grows up to start, their own ministry maybe, or, following your footsteps and yours, and then they impact somebody else and they impact somebody else. And the reach can become so huge. We often get tunnel vision and we think that, I live in a town of, what do we live, 100,000 people in Sonoma County, and we feel like we can only impact those 100,000, but that's actually just a drop in the bucket. If we can impact 100 people that impact 100 people that impact 100 people, I mean, you're at millions already.
That's it. And I always tell people, like, 10 people could change the culture. 10 intentional people could literally change the culture of what they're doing. And you don't see that, but who was the guy that witnessed to Billy Graham, who went on to preach to millions of people? You don't hear about that guy, but he had generational impact. And that's for me, from my life. Like, I come from a family where my mom was in prison, my dad was in prison. I got 6 brothers and they all been in prison. And when God changed my life, I said, I want to change my daughter's generation and her daughter's generation. And I want them to be able to look back and say, look, my dad made a difference.
So I think that that's something, I hear this all the time and I don't believe in it. I understand it, but I don't believe it. You're a product of your environment. Where you grew up, the way you grew up dictates your future. And people who have followed me for a while, they know my story about where I grew up in Atlanta. And, I had a choice to make, and that was either I follow what everybody else that was surrounding me was doing, or I make changes. And I had some help. I had a lot of help along the way. Definitely couldn't have come this far on my own. But what do you think when it comes to your environment? And are you a product of your environment, or do you have the ability to change? Or does it take somebody helping you recognize that you can change before you change? People can do it on their own.
So I think there's a quote I love, and it says, are you a product of your environment, or is your environment a product of you? And it's cool to, I think it's one thing for a kid to say they're a product of their environment because they can't help it. The problem is when grown men and women do the same thing. And that was my story. I was 25 years old saying, this is my mom and dad's fault. And until I looked in the mirror and there wasn't nothing left but, Nick, no, this is your fault. You made these decisions. Your mom didn't force you to do this. Your dad didn't force you to do this. Because I got to a certain age where I knew right from wrong, where I could make the choice. And I no longer could put that on them. So I think that's a crutch that a lot of people like to use is, man, I'm just a product of my environment. I'll never be able to do this. And I do believe that it takes other people. For me, it was a guy named John Brennan. He invested in me. He used to teach youth, and he was on The Real World. And he used to just take us to get pizza, and he would pay for me to go to youth camp. And he would say, Nick, I believe there's something greater for you. So I believe it takes people like that to pour hope into people who see no future. I think, and that's what I want to be for other people.
Yeah, I love that. And, For me, it was my grandfather. I mean, my grandfather
Yeah,
called me up one day and was like, "Hey, you're about to change, and I'm about to show you how to change." So
that's it.
I think I agree with you. And I wrote your quote down. I'll make sure I got it right because I've never heard that before. I love it. It says, "You're not Are you a product of your environment, or is your environment a product of you?" Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it. So is your environment a product of you? Like, are you now being the change that you wanted? Are you affecting your environment to where everything has to shift around you? And one of my favorite things that I always think about is when you're around people that are growing, it becomes uncomfortable for people that are not growing. And eventually they'll weed themselves out, right? Because your environment is now a product of you and the growth that is going on with you. So friends that I used to have, I don't hang out with them anymore because of the growth and what God has done in my life. My environment shifted when God shifted my heart.
Yeah, I love that. And I've had people come up to me, same situation, and say, "Hey, you've changed." And I look at them and I say, "And you haven't."
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
powerful. I love that. And you're right. You're spot on the growth. When because I do believe that, you're the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with in terms of how they
yeah,
influence you, especially with where you want to go. So if you want to be,
that's
I tell
it.
people this, like they ask me like, "Hey, how do I become a millionaire?" That's what they want. It's like, go, who you hanging out with that's a millionaire? Go
That's
surround
right.
yourself with 5 other millionaires and watch what happens over the next 3 to 5 years. Or if you want to become more faithful, then okay, who are you hanging out with? How often are you going to church? Go surround yourself with that and watch what happens in the next 3 to 5 years. And even if it's like, I believe it at the core level of, you want to be more happy, go hang out with happy people, and you're going to
Oh,
start to be happy. Because then it's going to, like you said, it's when you're growing or you're changing, it becomes uncomfortable to go back to where you used to be. So it constantly pushes you forward in that upward, if you will, trajectory in order to consistently better, all aspects of life, or one that you're working on.
yeah, that was one of the quotes that we always used in Friends of Sinners is show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Mm.
That if you want a healthy marriage, you should hang around people that have healthy marriages. Because again, you're not going to fit in if this man is loving his wife well and you're over here laying on the couch. You won't have nothing to unite around. Like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. I really believe that. Like, you are a sum total, like what you said, whether that's, 5 millionaires or 5 people in church or 5 people with radical faith. You'll end up kind of just like the people that you surround yourself with.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100%. I love that. Love that. So tell me, if there was only one thing that all of our listeners today could walk away with, and take away from this conversation, what would you want it to be?
So the first thing, and I'm a pastor, so the first thing is I would say you got to believe in Jesus. Like, Jesus is what changed Nick Martin's life. I couldn't do it by myself. I tried it a million different ways, a million different times to only end up at square one. And the second thing I would want you to believe is change is possible. That whatever circumstance you're in right now, and that you want to change, that change is possible. One of my favorite things, even about Mondays, is I've been on a weight loss journey, and I always think Monday, perfect time to change, right? Perfect time. It's a restart. So that's the second thing that I would want people to take is change is possible. You can restart today. I don't care if you failed 10 times for the last 10 years, that there's no reason why you can't restart today and why you can't change. In a year from now, you be proud of the decision that you made today.
I love that. 'Cause, yeah, I say this all the time. Today's the first day of the rest of your life. What are you going to do with it? Yeah,
Man, that's it.
the past is the past. Let's not dwell on that. Let's move forward. How can we move forward and move in the right direction from here? So
That's it.
I love that. So tell us, a little bit more about Matthew's Table as we kind of wrap this up. But I think you got an amazing thing going on. So what's the location? What times are your
Yeah.
services? If somebody wants to check it out, like, just give us the spill on that.
Yeah. So Matthew's Table, we have 2 services on Sundays at 8:30 and 10:45 right now. On April the 3rd, we are switching to 9 and 11. So just take note of that. 9 and 11 starting April the 3rd, and we have a Wednesday night service at 6. We have an awesome youth department, kids ministry, and one of our favorite things at the church is we say there's a seat at the table for you. That's whether you're a doctor or you're homeless. That's whether you're a police officer or you're addicted. There's a seat at the table for you. No one's too far gone. No one's too broken. Like there's a place for you. And we've always said this, that, hey, we want to be a church that loves people where they're at, but not, we want to love them so much to get them beyond where they're at too. So we want to love you where you're at, wherever that is today. There's a seat at the table for you. We'd love to have you if you don't have a home church. 9 and 11 starting April the 3rd.
I love that. And if somebody wants to get involved, whether it be through voluntary or monetary donations, do they reach out to you, or how do they?
Yeah, they can go to our website, MatthewsTable.owensboro.com, or we have a Facebook page, Matthews Table, or you can always reach out to me. I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Again, I'd love to see you at church. So if you want to connect, let's connect. If anybody needs any prayer, I'd love to pray with you.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to take one of the last things that you wrote in preparing for this, and I hope you don't mind me still and twisting it a little bit, but they're in a building they couldn't afford with a plan they couldn't come up with, worshiping a faithful God. I just absolutely love that.
God is faithful.
Yes, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for spending some time with us today. This has been really impactful. I got almost a whole page of notes here already that you made me think about some things, and I just appreciate you and your time. And for everybody else, definitely check out Matthew's Table. Reach out to Nick if you like to have some more conversations around faith or fear or anything. So as I know, he's a really great person that's going to impact a lot of lives. So appreciate
Thanks for having me on, man. I love what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do it again sometime soon.
All right, have a good one.
All right, see ya.